she lifts up my
with her bare hands.
Yes, with her bare cold hands, and takes a crystal and tucks it in my and then holds it with my sack, like drops my sack, and it's just holding this crystal.
Emilio, I asked for you to come onto this podcast because truly, I think you are one of the most interesting storytellers. I think your life is riddled with some of the most ridiculous things. And I really want to capture it into a podcast so that we can watch it back later. Ryan and I, you can watch it back later. You can share it with whoever you want. So I want to begin with, what have you been up to for the past, how long has it been since we've hung out? 4 years?
That's what I've been trying to think of since I got here. What's the last thing I was doing when we were all hanging out?
Well, we would go to the gym together, and you were just always the funny person. If you came along, it was always it's going to be a good time. That's kind of how we can describe you.
I'm just a good exaggerator, that's all.
But you need that to be a good storyteller.
If I stubbed my toe, I'd tell you, well, this one time I broke my foot, that's
Right.
That's the premise of all my stories.
I feel like crazy things have also happened to you that you probably don't know is actually crazy until you say it, and then people are like, wait, what?
Yeah.
So tell me what you've been... I know the last time that we FaceTimed was a couple days ago, and you showed us your house that you are renovating.
Yeah.
So you've become a renovator.
Yes. Oh, okay. All right, so that's that. What was I doing for work? Do you guys remember what I was doing for work when we hung out?
Running the Harley dealership.
Oh my gosh.
No, I'm just kidding. I mean,
dude.
maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. So I went from just renovating houses, so what I would do is advertise myself on Facebook, Craigslist, whatever.
As what? Like a handyman?
Yeah, man, for some reason, everyone takes offense to that word so much.
Handyman?
Yeah, well, because when you think of a handyman, you're like, I can fix your sink, Gretchen,
But that's awesome.
Yeah, for Gretchen, But, yeah, so I would work, under Alex, our buddy, he's a general contractor. I would work under him. I would, just basic carpentry stuff. And then when I was kickboxing and I got blood clot in my lungs.
Whoa.
So we were sparring, me and a couple buddies were sparring, and I ended up breaking my leg, and it put me in bad shape, right?
Wow.
So flash forward a month, I'm thinking everything's fine. I start coughing up blood. I'm in the hospital, and I'm like, I'm dead broke. I have 2 kids, and I'm like, I gotta change something. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because I'm just going paycheck to paycheck, and I'm really not doing anything to weasel my way out of that, you know? And then at that point, I didn't really want to be known as the construction guy, but it was the only thing I was good at. So I'm looking at all these investors and people with money that I idolize as if it's this unreachable thing. And I'm like, well, all they're doing is borrowing other people's money to get me to work. And then I'm making all those people a bunch of money. Mm-hmm. So I figured out a pretty simple algorithm on finding distressed properties that aren't listed, right? So I'm not competing with anybody else because the houses aren't for sale. Mm. So let's say you're driving down, and how I started was, essentially you're driving down the road, you see a house with a tarp on the roof. Well, the reason they got that tarp is because they can't afford to fix it, right? They might be upside down in their house, they might be behind on their payments, they might be in foreclosure. There's a lot of different things. So you approach that house and you go, hey man, have you ever thought about just selling it instead of dealing with all the things you have to deal with and then just moving on? Well, yeah, I'd love to, but I'm not going to get the money that I owe. So it became this thing of figuring out how those people could essentially make a little bit of money, even 10 grand to somebody who's behind 40,000 on their mortgage. It's going to be worth something to them. You know what I mean? Get them into a rental or something like that. And then I find somebody a pilot who has what we would consider stale money. A pilot, doctor, somebody who makes a good income, but needs that money to move or else it's just going to dwindle down in their bank account.
Stale money.
Stale money.
Is that a thing you came up with?
I mean...
It puts a picture in my mind.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure I didn't come up with it, but yeah, I've never heard it.
Just claim it.
It's mine. I take it. But yeah, so anybody with money sitting around and then I started looking up, I knew nothing about stocks. And I looked up what would be a good index versus an average index and all these returns that people make on dividends and different types of income and stuff. And I'm like, well, that isn't that much money. I'm thinking if you have money in stocks, again, broke person's mindset, because I'm broke at this point. I'm thinking if you have stocks, you must just have a bunch of money, but it's not how it works. It's a slow growth. So with my system and the numbers that I was putting together, if you were to give me 30 grand in 3 months, I could make you 30. I could give you 39 back. So I made you 9 grand. That's 30%. There's no stock in the world that does that. So I was like, they're looking at 10% returns on the high end. And I'm like, oh, well, let me try it. So I put out what's called a PO on this website that's specifically for people who want to invest money in things and don't really know where to start. And you pay, it's like a membership. You like pay to be a part of that. And then everybody reached out to me. Everyone was like, take my money. Like, but I've never done this, so I didn't know if it was going to work. You know what I mean? Like, so I was like, well, so what do I have to lose? So I wrote up the contract in a way that protected myself without screwing people over, and then also protected their investment, right? Like, they would get to keep the property if I couldn't come through on it, which would suck for me because I did all that work and then make no money.
Right.
But if it did work, I'd be splitting the resale of the house. Like, these were flips, right?
Yeah.
So I did that, built a good team, a small team. I mean, I got sharked. Like, I lost big on one by people who know about this already, and then find ways to find people like me that are doing it,
that
and then
like
screw
new?
them over. Yeah.
Oh, that don't know yet.
Oh yeah. I lost big. Like, I sat around on one property. I lost so big. I sat around for 2 months, like literally just cried for like the first month, and was like, I don't ever want to do this again.
Yeah.
Like, I don't ever want to pick up a hammer or nothing. But
well, it makes you not trust the people who then come to you, and then you're like, wait, if I can be burned this badly, where are the other sharks?
Yeah, well, I went from $0 with zero debt to, in my savings, I probably had like almost 60 grand, right? In a couple of months. And then by the end of that year, I'm 7,000 in debt to people, and I have no idea how to get their money. And I lost the property. So I'm like, oh man, like this, you can lose,
Right.
like it's gambling on just a super high level.
Right.
So, you learn from those things though, you move forward. And then, I got to a point where I no longer had to use those people and their money. I could do it myself. Right. But I still saw the perks of money and those relationships. And then instead of, using investors, now I just have a partner, which is somebody like I idolize, like big time. Like, this dude financially is everything I ever want to be.
Nice.
So, and luckily I have him as a good friend, a mentor, and a business partner. And then what we do, we just buy and hold now. So I just rentals,
That is so rare to find somebody that not only is who you kind of aspire to be, but they're also a good person and they're willing to kind of have you involved in their life. I've been telling Ryan, like, where is that woman for me? Like, I want some girl who's like a couple years ahead of me in their life and they're kind of in the same area of interest as me, but I can look to them and be like, how did you get there? And then they're willing to say, this is how I got there.
See, I feel like a lot of that is relatable regardless of what people do though.
Yeah.
Like I'm a big person on experience. Like, that word means like a lot to me because let's say somebody's been doing construction for 30 years, right? And then you've got this guy who went to school for 2 years. That guy can learn everything that this guy potentially was going to go through, but until you go through it, those are just thoughts. Those are just ideas, right? And then once you go through them, it's a completely different experience. You can be told how to handle an emergency 50 different ways.
Yeah.
If this happens, do this. If this happens, do this. But until you go through it and feel the panic that comes with it, you have no clue how you're actually going to react, because most people, even with that experience, just freeze up. And they go, well, I don't know what to do. I do feel lost. I sat on my couch for a month and was like, dude, it took the wind completely out of my sails when I took that loss, right? But, I'm talking to my dad one day, and it's something as simple as, well, son, you started from scratch. Now you're starting from the same spot with 10 years of knowledge.
Yep.
What are you afraid of? If you did it once, it's even easier to do it now, buddy.
Yeah.
Take that same algorithm, take that same process that because my dad was a contractor his whole life, but he just worked the system the way you're supposed to work the system. You know what I mean? Like, he climbed that labor ladder, killing himself most of his life for a basic wage until he was able to open, later in life he opened up his own company and did well for himself and stuff. But that, just the experience itself though, to just say, hey, like, you're good, man. Like, you're just upset. That's all,
Yeah.
Like, so for you, like, it could be like your mom.
It's true. She is somebody who has, I mean, if you know her whole story, coming from another country and basically paving her own way, like all of that stuff, for sure, she is very inspiring. I do feel like sometimes, though, I wonder if you feel the same way with your dad, that there is always kind of going to be that thing where it's like, because it's your parent, you can't be like fully open and honest? Or are you just like, doesn't matter?
I don't have that at all. No, I'm fortunate though. My dad, like, so growing up, my dad, he worked in New Jersey. So he was home like, and then when he wasn't, he was a union worker in the city. So when my dad was around, he was more just trying to like not be your buddy, but like he was just around reinforcing what my mom said. So my mom was still like the enforcer, the rule maker, the boss.
Yeah.
And to this day, my dad will tell you she's the boss.
Yeah.
And it's just them in the house. Like
Nice.
But I'm fortunate though, because like, there were times like when my mom would find like weed and shit like that in my drawers or something, like she'd be pissed, like, what are you doing with your life? Where are you going or whatever? Yeah. And then my dad would be like, Emilio, it'll be in my room. Don't let her find it. Stuff like that,
Yeah.
And so it was always cool to have that, and then like when I was like, I don't know, 17 or 18, like probably just got out of high school, me and my best friend, like we can't find anybody to buy us alcohol. And he's like, well, your dad's cool as shit, man. Just ask your dad. I'm like, no way, dude. And I had this thing in my head, like he would never do that. I'm like, finally, whatever, man. I want to look cool in front of my friends. So I'm like, hey, Dad, will you buy us alcohol? And he's like, what the fuck, man? Like, yeah, okay, I guess. Jesus, let's go before your mother gets home. Let's go now, And
yeah.
So we get in the car. I'm in the passenger seat. Anthony's in the driver's seat. And we get in the car. And my dad's like, I can smell the weed, Emilio. I'm like, oh, can you? And he's like, pass it back. What are we doing? Let's go. Like.
I like how he's trying to play the role of like, I'm angry with you, but everything he's saying is like, give it to. Oh, that's so funny. I love people like that. I love characters on shows that are like that, where they're like contrary to how like what they're saying doesn't match how they're saying it. Like I love Schmidt from New Girl. You ever watch that show?
No.
You probably don't watch that show.
No.
He's kind of like that. Okay, so I really want to talk about experience, because that is something that if you've ever watched the show Naked and Afraid. Have you guys ever watched that show?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like the episode with what's his name?
Like
Seth Rogen and
he does a Naked and Afraid.
It's like a parody, but yeah, he does Seth Rogen and his buddy
James Franco.
James Franco, yeah.
Well, we need to watch that.
They didn't do like an actual episode, did they?
Yeah, it's a whole episode.
We're gonna go home.
Yeah,
and watch
James
that.
Franco brings like. He's like, what'd you bring? And James Franco has a pair of sunglasses. And he's like, what does that do? He's like, A, I can start little fires, and B, I look cool as shit.
You can't start fires with a pair
that's what he says. He's like, they're polarized.
They don't let the sun through.
They're designed to not start fires in your eyeballs.
That's amazing. Well, we need to watch that. So that show, I think, proves it's the people who want to have the experience of survival and all this stuff, and those are usually people who are already interested. They're people who have been building what do they call it, like a primitive fire starter at home, or the piece of wood that you like, I don't know, whatever. I don't know anything about survival, so watching that show, I'm kind of like, don't know if I could ever do that, but it's fun. But I think the difference between, we watched this one episode where it was a guy who read books on survival but had never done anything, so like the knowledge was all in his head, and it's kind of like the character in the series of Unfortunate Events, the siblings. It's like the brother is the reader. He's the one who reads everything, and he like memorizes stuff that he reads, but then the sister is the one who builds. She's the one who does stuff. So it's almost like he can consult her on how. So it's kind of like that pairing. And I've always been curious about people who know things but then don't do them versus people who do them and don't really know what they're doing. It's kind of like, would you rather read a book on sailing or go sailing?
Right.
So for you, it sounds like your philosophy on life is like, do it to gain that experience, because it doesn't matter what you know or what you think you know when you're in the middle of it. Like you're talking about an emergency, you don't want to find out that you're a freeze type of person, you know, like the flight or fight or freeze. You don't want to find out while you're in the middle of it, because if you need to get out of there, you probably need to get out. So my question for you is, when it comes to experience, is there a smart way to go about doing things? Because obviously things in life can be dangerous, but also exciting, and then teach you a lot and blah, blah, blah. But then there's also things that could hurt you.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it depends on what you're doing. Like, so if it's like business, like, so I've created myself into an entrepreneur, right? And I've won and I've lost. You know what I mean? Overall, I mean, I'm still going, so I'd consider that a win. Right. You know what I mean? I'm not backing out of it, you know, knocking on doors for jobs. But I don't know. It depends on what you're doing. Like, I think everybody is 100% capable of doing whatever they want to do. Now, finding actual belief in yourself is a whole different strategy. Like, because I genuinely believe a lot of people blame external forces for them not moving forward.
Yeah.
And I can't stand that. Like, especially with millennials, especially like they want to blame everything else. Like, the great thing about like our generation is that like they want to fix everything in front of them, right? The second they see a problem, they're like, that's not good. That's not benefiting everybody. Let's fix that, right? But it's also the blame game at the same time. Well, it wouldn't have happened if it was your fault. What does that matter? Like, what can we do to put the pieces in front of us and get past it? You know, and I also feel like a lot of people are just satisfied putting that puzzle together and calling it a win. Like they want to celebrate every small victory, and I don't see the point in that. Like, I'm always on to the next thing. Like, I just assume, which is, I guess, narcissistic, but for me it works. Like, I just assume that I'm going to tackle that. If I fail at it, now I just have to go at a different angle, but I'm going to get it. So
you think that's narcissism?
I think I'm narcissistic about it.
But I don't think, this is what's funny about that word. I'm not exactly sure if you can be a narcissist and be self-aware. And I think you are very self-aware.
Yeah.
Like, very self-aware, to the point where since we haven't talked in years, I remember I overheard you initially talking to Ryan on the phone when you showed us your house, and you're talking about all kinds of things. And I was like, damn, Emilio's like really, I feel like you like matured into this person that has a really good opinion on things, even things that obviously you know about, but even things that you don't know much about. It's like you can apply this view of life that you've developed over all these years onto something that's like, oh, that's good. That's not like, yeah, but Emilio, you haven't thought about that. You know, it's almost like you've become very thoughtful about things that are important. And I feel like we're talking about our generation, like, maybe that's lacking a little bit, you know, like
sure.
Actually processing things and
100%.
saying, okay, how's this going to play out? Do you feel like you've always been that way?
Yeah, like my parenting plays a huge role in that, because my parents, like, you know, when we were growing up, it wasn't like poverty, like, you know, we were searching for breadcrumbs and stuff like that, but like we didn't make a lot of money, and we lived in a trailer home, which most people would associate with poverty. But my parents were really good at never giving me the answer to anything on purpose, like, but showing you the puzzle pieces. You know what I mean? Like I can't tell you what to do, son. Like, you're gonna make your own choices, man. Like, but here are your pros and cons. Like, what do you think? You know, what do you think you should do?
Do you use that kind of parenting on your kids?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, obviously there's like hey, don't punch your brother in the face. That's
Right.
not good anytime.
Right.
Ever. Like,
Right.
you know, but yeah, like I was telling my girlfriend, like, my son came up to me and he was like, Dad, do you believe in God? And I was like, well, what does that matter? He was like, I don't know. I was, you know, because his grandmother is very religious, and she takes him to church and stuff, and he enjoys it. And he's like, I don't know, I've been going to church, and I was just wondering if, like, I don't know if Jesus is real. And I was like, well, that's something for you to figure out, man. That should be fun. You know what I mean? Like, go figure it out. Like, it doesn't matter. I don't want him to believe something because I believe it.
Right.
I also don't want him to not believe something because I don't believe it. Right. So my parents were always good at that. They were also very good at just calling stuff out. Like, if we couldn't get something, they'd be like, hey man, we just can't afford it. Like, it is what it is. You know, like, I know so-and-so has that, you know, if you want to go to his house and play with it, great, but we can't afford it. So
Did you ever feel shame not having the things that other people had?
Oh yeah, in middle school, yeah. I mean, I was when I first started making money, even in my, like, I started making like pretty decent money in like my mid-20s, I was very vain because I had never gotten those things, period. Like, so I was kind of like a late bloomer with dumb things. Like, I had the lifted trucks. I had 2 of them, you know, like the crazy speakers and stuff. Now, mind you, I'm like competing with like teenagers, you know, like I felt like
I'm gonna show you. And
yeah,
they're
like
okay, old man.
yeah, they're like, you're bald, idiot. Like, you know, like, so, you know, I'm sitting at stoplights and it's like, you know, 25-year-old me with 2 kids and then a bunch of teenagers like showing off their truck. Yeah, I don't know, you know, but like I got to do it and I would quickly realize like, oh, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm competing with so many people who, first of all, like, you know, a lot of in Sarasota, a lot of the youth is just has good parents.
Their parents bought their nice truck, yeah.
But I'm just competing with people that in it sounds worse than it is. They're not as successful as I am. So why am I competing with them? Like, why do I care what these people think when they don't work as hard as I work? You know, and I'm talking on like a general standard. Like, you know, there are people that work much harder than me and do much better than me, but I was only concerned with the opinions of the people who weren't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Why do you think we do that? As people, it's almost like this weird thing where if you sat and you really thought about it, you're like, oh, this doesn't make sense to be competing. Because I always say the people who, if you ever watch like a music cover or something and you read the comments, the people who are the professionals who are critiquing the person are not, in my opinion, a true professional is not going to go onto a YouTube video and critique somebody. So I go, the real people whose opinions matter usually don't show up online because they're the ones who are like, I'm just going to move on. Like, nobody cares to see this unless they...
Well, that's that person's form of expression or their art piece that they put together and moved on. Like,
right.
That's
so
what it is.
It is interesting when we see people who are... It's kind of weird to, like, compare people because I think it all depends on what you value in life. So if you look at somebody with a really nice car, you can have envy if that's something that you value. But then you can look at somebody, so for instance, the Kardashian family. That's why they're so polarizing, because some people love them for their fame and their money and their big, extravagant wealth. And then some people like me, I envy their amazing, close-knit family. Like, you watch them and you just go, I wish somebody had my back.
They're ride or die, no matter what.
They really are. And that is something that I think a lot of people overlook just because they think, oh, they're putting something on for the camera or whatever. But if you watch that show, you go, they're so consistent just with them being a tight-knit family. And I go, it's because they value that, obviously. So what would you say as far as, because obviously growing up, we have different things that we value and different things that we look at. At this stage in your life, how old are you? 30? 30 years old.
Yep.
What do you think is the most valuable thing that you can strive for?
More experience.
Really?
Yeah. I just like, now that I had these goals set up that I thought would take me, you know, umpteen years. Like, I thought I would just always be striving for these things that I now have. So for me now, it's like they're like building blocks. Like, you know, I'm always looking past those things. Once I saw that they were in reach, I was like, well, it's not a matter of getting them. It's how big can I build them? Like, and what are other things that I can do with them? You know what I mean? So, like, right now I'm in the middle of opening another investment that I never thought I would be doing. You know what I mean? And if it was a done deal, I'd talk about it. But, like, the bottom line is, like, you know, I was reaching for these these two doors. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I get to them, and there's a whole building of things that I can kind of mess with and make money with, and also enjoy myself with. You know what I mean?
Right.
But with what you said earlier, I think it's a validation thing when it comes to people watching other people.
Yes.
Like, it's almost like they compete, right? And there's nothing wrong with healthy competition. Like,
Well, we have to.
right. Like, if I see you doing something I didn't know I could do, and then I decide to myself, I want to do that, well, of course I'm going to want to do it better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a good goal to have.
Right.
It's whether or not, if you don't achieve it, how do you react?
Yes.
And then where do you go from there?
Right.
Like, do you give up and just call it a day? Or do you... Or,
That's where philosophy, I think, comes in.
Yeah.
And so for you, it is kind of interesting to hear you say that you spent a month sitting in almost this like dark cloud after the big loss. I think what's funny is people think that the successful people either don't experience those things or they have some sort of a magical ability to just not feel those. Did you happen to watch the Michael Jordan.
Yeah. Very different.
They're the same people.
They're the same.
Ryan, do you remember the name of that documentary?
A Star is Born.
No. That's what it should be called, though. So I forgot the name of it, but it's like a 10-part ESPN. It's basically talking about him playing on the Chicago Bulls and that just his story.
Right.
The Last Dance.
The Last Dance. So I'm not into basketball.
Right.
I am not into, like, I knew his name, obviously. I know, like, he's on, like, his, like, symbol of him, like, jumping through the air. I knew things about him, but I couldn't pick him out. Like, if you're like, who are these people? I'd be like, I don't know.
Really?
Like, really.
Yeah, she had no idea who Michael Jordan was.
How old are you?
It's because I'm not into basketball. I'm 28, but listen, it's because
he was a generational icon.
But we also didn't have TV. Like, that's the other big thing. I never watched him in commercials.
Right.
But I know of him. Like, he wasn't just like a mystery. But here's the thing.
He's
when
the
you,
guy from Space Jam, to answer your question.
Yes, that's exactly that's what I thought. So watching that documentary, first of all, it is so inspiring because you're watching somebody who is, I think, the epitome of somebody who says, this is possible. Like playing basketball is possible, right? There's teams, there's people, whatever. And he says, I'm going to be the best at this thing. Not just like the best on my team or like the best in my region, like the best of all time. And he had this thing implanted in his brain where if you watch him while he's some of the most glorious moments were when he was losing, when people were undermining him and saying like, you can't do this or whatever. Cause he was shorter. I mean, he's tall, but he was like shorter when you watch him playing, which is so
he wasn't 8 foot tall like the rest of the basketball players.
Exactly. Yeah. And so when you watch him playing, you're like, oh, he's kind of the short one. Like so weird. But anyways, when he is thinking in his head, like they don't think I can do this, that's when his belief in himself would go through the roof. Yeah. But he looked like he was a lion that was about to kill you. Like you see him sitting there and he's just like focused on something. And I love the people who say like, when I played against him, it felt like I was playing against God, because you can tell he's tapped into something that is not just his talent, it's his discipline, it's his belief in himself. It is this like, and I think he was a narcissist because you kind of have to be like Kanye West. You have to be that person in order to be able to do some of the crazy things that they've done.
There's an advantage that they have though, is like Michael Jordan had arenas of 20,000 people staring down on him, right? And it's firing you up and stuff like that. And one person I'm obsessed with is David Goggins. Like, are you familiar with David Goggins? Like, so David Goggins is somebody who doesn't believe in motivation, because like that right there is motivation, right? Like now I'm motivated in this moment to do better and take that energy and boom, you have an advantage. When and I'm not saying I'm better than Michael Jordan, I'm just saying the disadvantage is like when I lost that deal, right? And it beat me, right? I had to fire all my guys, I had to lose all my property, whatever, all the contracts that I had at that time. I didn't have 20,000 people looking at me being like, can he do it? You know?
No. Imagine 20,000 people saying you can't do it.
I get that, but imagine, so I just get up in the morning and I'm like, I can just not deal with this. There's no motivation to deal with it.
In his practices and stuff, he was ruthless, and he was like, I'm going to berate you, my teammates, because that's the only way to get you guys. It's almost like,
and he was
aggression.
really big about bragging. Like, yes. I was here 4 hours before you guys got here, and I left 4 hours after you left. So you guys were just putting in these little pitter-patter practices.
That's the truth. And if I was on his team, I would be the best team. We would be the best team because of him.
Right.
And you look at some of these people and you go, is it the right way to do it? I don't know, because then you look at the results and you go, if that's what you have to do in order to be a winner.
All the greats include, and listen, again, he's a generational icon for a reason, right? I'm just saying it's two different areas of being motivated. Like you still need the get up and go when you don't have the motivation behind it. You know what I mean? Like you still need to find that inner fuel when you're down and out. You know what I mean? In his sense, where that could apply to everything today is I feel like everybody today is so equality of outcome. Like everybody wants everybody to succeed, and unfortunately, it's just not how it works. You know, like if that was how it was going to work, why would I come early and leave late? Why would I do that? No matter what, I'm going to get the same thing you get. And I feel like a lot of people right now, especially our age, don't think that they have to work. Like they don't feel like they have to come early and leave late to get those things, because they deserve a social life, and they deserve to get off work at 5 and still be able to pay their, or whatever you want to call it, man. Like, no, you just want to be relaxed and be rich, and unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. Like, I don't go home and clock out. You know, like I don't sleep well all the time. You know what I mean? Like,
I think where a lot of that's coming from is, do you spend a lot of time on social media?
No.
So I think this is just my
marketplace. I'm constantly looking at what's for sale.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you kind of have to pick that area that you spend time like feeding yourself with. So we watch a lot of movies and TV because that's our area. Like we love watching and saying, "Oh, look at the lighting and the acting and all that."
Yeah.
I don't look at that as like, I mean, it is wasting time, but I look at it as like it's giving me something for my
From an artistic
career.
perspective, you can still appreciate it,
Right.
And you know what's going on, like cinematically, and how
Right.
they, oh well, they're using a
Right.
C10 for this shot.
So I feel like
Yeah.
we're always learning, even though we watch shows repeatedly. But either way, I think social media and the just constantly seeing the people who look as if they are just relaxing and rich, I think that's where there's this kind of disconnect between how to get there and what's going on behind the scenes. Like what happened right before and right after taking that picture of like relaxing by the pool.
Right.
And I think we have initially, there was this rejection of like the hard work that goes into it because it's like, who's interested in that? We're more interested in the glory,
Right,
the ending.
right.
And now it's almost like, especially in the fitness world, people are very drawn to watching people do the hard work. They're
Yeah.
very drawn to watching
Oh, yeah.
the waking up at 5 a.m. and I have my life in order.
30-day challenges.
Yes.
How many of those have I watched, dude?
Yeah.
This guy looks like, and most of them are complete bullshit. But I mean, you know,
Right.
you look at him and you're like,
But it
wow.
does something that is, it's motivation, but in my opinion, I think you're right. And I think David Goggins, that's his name,
Yeah.
is right when he says motivation, like it can't be the thing that you have to rely on in order to get those things, because Michael Jordan, there's so many people who had zero motivation. If anything, they were in that dark tunnel, and they said they've trained themselves to basically have discipline and habit. And
Yeah.
like Ryan's the person that I know for a fact, he's proven that doing something over and over and over again led to, I mean, I don't know if Emilio knows, but like you've been running every single day, like you've done something that you never did before, you never really wanted to, and then you like applied it to your life. And by doing it every day, even when it was difficult, even when he didn't want to, he'd wake up and be
Yeah.
like, I don't want to run. It's what is that thing?
That's
you know?
that's the problem. And we've talked about this on another podcast, but I don't know where the will to do anything comes from.
Right.
Right.
It's like, well, why did you have motivation to get back up after your big loss and continue and do it again?
Yeah. What is
Like,
that?
what-
Ignorance,
Well,
No.
stupidity,
It's got to be something.
It could be.
It
I
could
mean-
be, but what else is that? You know, like as
determination. Like
Yeah.
I wasn't satisfied leaving it there. Like I had pictured myself with a certain amount of success, or what I consider success. You know what I mean? I had pictured myself in a certain light, and I hadn't reached that yet. So one reason that I don't care about social media and stuff like that is because you're looking at everyone's portrayal of themselves. Well, I don't want to portray myself in a certain light. I want to find out who I am, because that's one thing I hated people being out of touch with. Like, there's a lot of people that I could never really vibe with because I felt like the way they saw themselves and the way that I saw them were so vastly different. And I was very afraid that that would happen to me. I was
Yeah.
like, man, I don't want to come off as this guy, because
It's almost like you have a genuine curiosity to find out what your actual limits are,
yeah,
what you're actually capable of.
yeah,
I agree with that.
yeah. And again, it's more like when I say finding myself, like genuinely, it's like getting to know Rita. It's like getting to know Ryan. Like, I'm literally looking at myself and because I feel like a lot of people just go, oh, I am this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do this.
Yeah.
I know me. You know, like, well,
Yeah.
I don't think you do, because based on the shit coming out of your mouth, that's not who you're saying you are. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
And the shit that you do with your life, like, you know, you say one thing, but I see another. So
Right.
like, I'm just somebody that's like, well, what am I internally invested in? Because I don't feel like I've really chosen a lot of things. I feel like I've fallen into them and then fallen in love with them. Like, how can I benefit those internal interests to just work off that?
So I'll use this as an example, see if this makes sense to you. Writing a show, right? Like,
I read shows all the time.
you do?
No.
It'd be
I
great
would
if you
love.
did.
I would honestly
It'd be
love
great
to
if you
read
did.
a show.
Can we look at some of that?
No, seriously,
Yeah, right.
I would love that. So being presented with this idea and saying, I have all the tools I need in order to write this script, hire the actors, and go and do my thing. But what happens, and I think maybe either creative people or maybe it's a different category of like just distraction or like, and Ryan, I think you like nailed this the other day when we were talking about it, that when something is handed to you, oftentimes people go like, ooh, that's good. But like, what else is out there? And they like don't follow through with the thing that's right in front of them, because it's almost like, I know that this could work.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the proverbial state of just being in like the what if, like what
Yeah.
could come next? Because if I focus on this thing, then my fear in my mind goes, well, what if the next best thing comes and passes me by because I already committed to this thing?
I'm afraid of that, and I'm afraid of the other side of it too. I think too many people get gratification for people agreeing with their ideas. So like a big reason I didn't tell you that second investment that I'm close to finishing. Well, I don't want the gratification of you going, oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's going to make money or whatever, because then the fulfillment is there without me actually doing it.
True.
So,
that is a good point.
So I won't put things out there until I've done them and reap the benefits.
Yep.
I've already reaped the benefits because it exists. I don't need your approval.
Right there is such a good point. It's like, don't brag. Let the thing speak for itself.
That's so good if you work alone.
Oh, that's true.
If you have to get a team on board, or you have to get, other people to join in with you. And that's one of the toughest things. I'd say that's one of the toughest things about like even our relationship and the work that we've done in the past is oftentimes we'll say, oh, we're going to do this thing. And then we get hot on another idea. And it's like, well, let's do that thing instead. And then
the first thing's on the back burner now.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And it's always this kind of like game that you're playing, like, well, which thing are we going to actually do? Or is it just going to be a continual string of us saying we're going to do this thing and then not actually doing it?
Because it's hard to stay excited about something the longer you're in it. You know what I'm saying?
hard,
Like if you're working on something for a year, it's like, are you still going to be excited after that year?
It gets embarrassing at some point, though, when you're like, okay, now I've told a bunch of people that I'm going to do this thing
haven't even
for a
started
year. I've done all these different projects and said we're going to do them, and we haven't finished.
I was notorious for that. That's why I don't. That's why I no longer do it, though.
You and me both, buddy. I think that's where we vibe so much.
Yeah. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do this. Dude, if I had stuck to any of the gym regimens I'd ever shown up, I'd be on here as a fitness coach.
That's so true.
But instead, I'm on here as Dad Bod 2.0, and
look,
I think good, man.
I know. I was going to say, first of all, I remember those times as all of us just kind of being like awkward, trying to feel like we were on this like good mission. I mean, do you remember that? It was like, well, we had a good friendship, I think.
Oh yeah, for
so
sure.
That was like the number one thing. But I remember us going to the gym and just having all these very like, I'm going to have 8-pack abs and like all this stuff. Like we would dream about these big things. And maybe it just comes with
confident
age.
too. Yeah, I'm doing legs this month because I want quads. Still don't have quads.
Yeah.
7 years later, I have no quads.
Right. But I think that all plays into like, if you're going to get abs or quads or whatever, just like do it. And you don't need to post about it or tell people about it. Like eventually someone might see and be like, oh damn, you got abs.
But it was so motivating too when Emilio was coming, because often it was you calling me and being like, hey, you want to go to the gym?
Right.
Hey, let's go to your gym, because I had one in my complex, so I think you were just using me, but that's fine. But
I just wanted to see him with his shirt off.
We used Emilio too, though. He was in a lot of videos that we made.
It was a mutually beneficial relationship. Yeah. But I mean, I remember being like, no, I'm not motivated. And then you had that other person to come with you, and it helped so much.
That's a super good point. Yeah.
But at some point you have to stop relying on the other people, and you have to stop doing only things with, I have to have somebody that's motivating me, and you have to find it within yourself.
Yeah.
But I don't know how you actually go about doing that.
Yeah, that's the magical thing. So we kind of talked about determination, right? It's the determination. You don't want to end and let the failure be the end of it, right? You're like, I need this to succeed. Right. I think a lot of people have that. You still probably haven't come up with what made you do that. I think maybe it's different for everyone. They all have this different thing that's making them, it's beyond motivation. It's making them say either like, I will do anything it takes to still be that version that I saw myself in, because everybody kind of looks at, well,
it's a question of, where does will come from?
Yeah.
Where do you like, oh, I willed myself to do this thing. Like, well, where did you get that will?
There's pros and cons to all of this though. Like there's a very bad side of all this too, because at what point will I stop and be satisfied?
True.
So like, my new fear as I get older is like, when is enough enough? Like me and Ryan were just texting the other day about the curse of wanting more. Like, I don't want to always be in a position where I'm not happy with what I have. And it's not that I'm not happy. I love the things that I have. I love the people in my life. I love the success that I've created for myself, right? But at the same time, like, my strive is so strong that it's overbearing. Like on the nights that I can't sleep.
Yeah.
On like driving a 2017 truck and being like, no, I need something different. I need something better. I need something. Well, what if it was like this?
I wonder if it's difference between better and different though. Like, is it okay to want something that it's just different? You just want to change a pace, and like, what were we talking about? Was it the guitar or something? Like,
yeah.
I got this, and now I'm going to want that, or whatever.
Yeah. Now that I got the guitar, now I need the amp.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's like always about better, or if it's just about like having
Change.
something different.
Yeah.
Like I just
Yeah.
want new experience. And that comes back to what your whole point was.
Yeah.
What you're striving after now is more new experience.
One thing that opened my eyes to that perspective at all was I was watching an interview with J. Cole. He's this big time rapper and stuff like that, and he was saying like he had
How out of touch do you think we are, bro?
well, you're white, so very. No, I'm just kidding. He had gotten the 2019 range, and he says he goes, I gotten this $100,000 car. I'm sitting inside of it, and I go, man, I wish the touchscreen was like this. The 2020 is gonna have this. I should have just waited and got that. Matter of fact, when it comes out, I'll just switch it for that. And he goes, man, I'm in a car most people will never ever even see. 20 years down the road, when it's something I wouldn't even look at. Like still, most people. What am I so unhappy about? I am a pessimist about the things that I'm buying.
Right.
Like,
You know
I
who
was
else had a
whoa.
story like that? Paris Hilton. So she had a documentary that came out on YouTube, and I don't even know what I was expecting from it, but there was a moment in there where you see, I mean, her story is, I think, kind of a tragedy. Like there's just so many things about her life that we didn't really know just as the public, and then you kind of learn about it in this. But one of the things that I think was interesting is she said she comes from a rich family, but she was determined to make her own money. And so she obviously, if you look at her empire and the companies that she started and stuff and just what she's done to make her wealth, it's pretty insane. But she was like, my first goal was $1 million. And it was like, when I get $1 million, I'll be happy. Well, you watch this documentary, you realize her new goal is to be a billionaire. And you go, well, obviously the $1 million didn't make her happy, and the $20 million didn't make her happy. And so it didn't matter. It doesn't matter when she reaches $1 billion, she's not going to feel like she's happy. So let's go back down to, instead of billions of dollars and all this and driving all these nice cars, what is that? What is that thing that says I can't be satisfied, even though I say this mile marker will bring me satisfaction? Like Johnny Depp has been quoted as saying, money can't buy you happiness, but it can buy you an island and a boat to get there, or something like that. So it's like we have all these ideas of what will make us happy, what will settle us, what will make us feel like we're okay in this space. But that restlessness to say, I'm not there yet, do you think that is kind of like the human spirit, one of those things that's like not ever going to give up? Or do you think that is a problem where people cannot feel satisfied in what they do?
There's a couple different things that have changed my perspective, right? Before I had kids, it was the vanity, right? Like I just wanted to look cool. I'm 100% honest when I say that. I thought that the only problems I had were bills, and that I just didn't own the shit that I wanted to own. Then you have kids, and then you look at like security. Like I don't want to leave this earth and then just have them like, oh well, dad was cool. That's it. Whatever. And then parallel to that, since I've had the kids, it's just a matter of how many of the things in my head that I want to accomplish can I accomplish? For what reason? I don't know. Again, it's just I know that I'm capable, so why not do them? You know what I mean? And I know that one thing I pride myself on that is that I'm willing to work harder than the guy next to me. And if I find somebody that can work as hard as me, they'll motivate me to work even harder. So I take pride in those things, and I attract those people in my life now. Like I don't ever, even the people that I have around me that don't think they're capable, fire me up in a different way. You know what I mean? And then I fire them up in the way that I'm fired up. You know what I mean? So it's like this revolving door of motivation, right?
Yeah. Or inspiration.
I
like to be inspired by people. I feel like maybe people kind of use those terms interchangeably, but I think inspiration is one of those things that it can be more powerful because, I get inspired by movies. It doesn't necessarily motivate me to like go make a movie, but it inspires me to, how many times have you like stopped watching or ended a movie and been like, I would like to be a lady who learns all languages and then speaks to aliens in Arrival. Like that is my goal. That is amazing.
I think that on a daily basis.
Right?
So.
It's, well, now I feel like I've opened the door to talk about aliens. Emilio,
Do it. Put it out there.
Do you believe in aliens?
Yes.
Like, seriously?
Me and Vegas saw a freaking alien ship the other day, dude.
Okay. everything about this. Tell me everything.
Who sees a comet going up into the sky?
Was it a rocket?
It's the wrong direction, comet.
Right.
Unless that bitch came from like the side where China is and hurled its ass around the earth, and we just saw the upstroke of that. And we're like, no. What happened was we're driving.
What happened was.
See, what happened is we're driving, and there's this comet going.
Wait, where were you driving? Because we've heard stories of people driving and seeing things.
Area 51.
Stop it.
Where were we driving? We're on the interstate.
On the interstate?
Somewhere between here and St. V.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to say,
was it like near Fruitville by chance?
Oh yeah, it was in Sarasota. It wasn't on Fruitville though.
Okay.
It was because the kids are off University. So it was University and 41 headed back to Bradenton.
Okay.
So we're driving though, and there's this. She's like, "Oh, look at that plane!" And I look up, and there's like it's got the I don't know, what do you call it?
Like a tail?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I said, look at that shooting plane.
Shooting
plane. You know, when planes just go up on fire.
Exactly.
So, anyways, it's like arcing like that. I'm like, there's no way. That's got to be something weird. And then it just like flashes and disappears.
No.
And then comes back without the tail and then loops around and shoots off the other direction that it was going. So essentially it does this. Right, but the arch was it disappeared for a little bit. Mm-hmm. They left Earth, grabbed coffee, and then came back and arched back around.
And were you like, this solidifies it, or did you believe in aliens before that?
No, I was like, like I was losing my mind.
So I think unfortunately, because movies have kind of painted this idea of aliens being like they're here to destroy us all and all of that stuff, I feel like people either don't think about it at all, like literally are just like, we're the only things out there, or they're afraid. But I look at the movie Arrival as like, that is what in my mind seems like the most likely thing, where they're so advanced and so like detached from us as humans that it's not like they really are here to like hurt us.
Arrival's the one that takes place in like the 40s, right? Or 50s?
Arrival is the one where there's like 12 ships that land all around the world. It's Amy Adams, and they like go up into it.
Let me tell you, if you haven't seen Arrival,
I'm gonna watch that one.
Go.
The best.
Oh wait, there's three of them, right?
3 of what?
Arrivals.
No, there's.
Okay, I don't know what I'm thinking of.
There's one movie. So they
John Goodman? No.
I think Jeremy Renner, I think it's his name, and Amy Adams. Literally the best alien movie, because what they've done.
It goes like this, dude. Interstellar, Arrival.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they're like very similar in my mind as far as great.
But no Matthew McConaughey.
No Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, not an Arrival.
I'm not watching it.
Here's the thing though. So what they've done, you do need to watch it, and I'm not going to give spoilers, but the idea that aliens are just one of those things where it's like, I don't want to be known as like the person that's going to go to like alien conventions and go storm Area 51, because I think that there's, like that. I feel like there's an extreme part of that, but there's a more almost like spiritual side of things where I'm like, I hope that aliens are real, because then that means so much, it means like the universe is not just like this empty thing.
Dude, Elon Musk had the craziest because everyone wants the evidence that it exists, right?
Right.
And he scared me when he was like, I forget, it was like Oprah or something like that, and was like, well, if aliens exist, Elon, you're so confident about it.
This is Oprah?
Yes.
That's what she sounds like.
She's that dorky little lady with the glasses, no?
Oprah?
I'm kidding. I know who Oprah is. Yeah, this is my Oprah voice.
Wow.
It wasn't Oprah. I'm sure it wasn't Oprah interviewing Elon Musk.
I think I would have watched that interview.
Does Oprah even do interviews
anymore? She probably
anymore?
could have made him cry. I don't know. She's has her own TV network.
She's a big old burly woman, and she knows how to move her weight around, right? Oh my God. But Elon, his answer to whoever's question was, if aliens, I think it was Elon Musk, if they exist, where's the evidence? He goes, well, if we're evolving, right? If we're in this continual state of evolution, the next thing would be similar to epiphenomena, which is a good example of that is when birds fly in a pack, they fly in unison without communicating verbally. So if you take one of these birds, the pack goes on knowing exactly where it's going, how it's getting there as a unit, and that bird is lost. But you put them with them, and they have this collective consciousness, right? So if we were to to evolve in his mind, we would no longer need our bodies. We just need our consciousness, like, astral projection type thing. And that's why we don't see burnt, other buildings on other planets and UFOs constantly, swarming around, whatever, which I saw one the other frickin' day. So maybe that's some unevolved redneck alien protruding in my airspace.
Love that idea though of them like joyriding. Like they had like an old banged up UFO like device.
The smart aliens don't have bodies, and the redneck ones have ships, and they're just like, look at the dumb Earthlings,
Yes, I like have a movie idea about that where they like come joyriding and then like, I don't know, this whole thing.
Yeah.
So with that, you're saying that basically there's aliens on other planets, but they're just like using their minds to travel?
Yeah, maybe their minds are vessels. Maybe it's like a virtual simulation. You know what I mean? Type thing.
I feel like we're totally
like their bodies are in one spot, but their minds are in another.
Right.
You know.
I mean, they show that technology in movies all the time. How much fun is it when it's like the projection and you're talking and then you like reach through and it's like and you're like, oh, it's a screen, and then like bye, and they disappear. That's amazing. And I feel like especially if it was Elon who was saying that, I'm like, what is he working on?
Yeah. Well, sometimes he says stuff and I go, I believe it. Like it's just that's truth. Like
exactly.
I don't need Neil deGrasse Tyson's approval. Like you jerk.
Ryan
I believe Elon.
Loves him. Yeah.
Wait, which one?
Elon.
Elon. Yeah. No, they're both great.
Neil.
You love
but
the cosmos.
I feel yes.
The cosmos. He is literally obsessed.
I love the
way
cosmos.
that he talks to me in Cosmos. I want everyone to talk to me like that.
Right?
Like I feel like with his voice, he's picked me up and he's like, we're gonna learn about space.
You know my favorite thing though is he does this. So he's like talking in this frame, and then the camera cuts, and he's like. Like he knows where it's going. I love it. It's so great.
And camera too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So good. So okay. So we're talking about aliens. What do you think happens when we die?
I go back and forth.
Like, what do you think consciousness is? And is it one of those things where people who where I kind of get scared about this. So people who have near-death experiences. A lot of them will say, I have experienced whatever comes after this. Like I was conscious without my body, all of this. And I go, is there a limit? So let's say there's like a chart or what is it called? Like a scale.
Timeline?
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, if it's a near-death experience, that means you never actually crossed over into real death.
Right.
Like if you can come back, if there's a possibility to save your whatever you are, then you have never actually. So the people who have had near-death experiences technically didn't actually die. Right. It was like something in between. So that's where I go. I want to believe in life after death. I want to believe that.
But why though?
Why?
Why? What is the comfort in that?
Because
not that I'm judging. I'm not judging it at all. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, living forever would be it would be dope. Like,
living forever as a human, never. But so this is what's weird. When I've had dreams that are very vivid, and the idea, like flying dreams, where you're flying over people and areas, and you just kind of have this existence that's not what you are as a human.
You've done that.
I've had that in dreams.
Okay.
Yeah. And I feel like there is something so comforting, and it feels like it's really hard to describe because it's almost not what I experience when I'm awake and I'm just a normal human. So I'm like, if there is something else to experience as my awareness continues, like I don't know if I'll always be Rita. Like I don't know if I'll always remember this and like where I lived and all of this, but the idea that there are other things that you can experience, I want that to be true because I just feel like it's too important to have this awareness and this consciousness that we have and the thoughts that we have for it to just go into nothing. You know what I'm saying?
One of the craziest things I've ever been through, ever. All right, so I'm in Colorado, and my friend's like, have you ever been to a shaman? I'm like, never been to a shaman. And like, this is like, I'm thinking like I'm gonna go to some place called Bamboo Rainforest, and there's gonna be like Mark in scrubs, and he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna rub your legs." You know,
wait, that's what you thought a shaman was?
No, I just like in today's modern time.
I see it as a guy dressed in like pine needles, like
he was, not pine needles, but like palm fronds. Anyways, I show up. I'm like, this is a legit Indian. You know, like like where did you find this guy? You know, like
in Colorado.
In Colorado, yeah. It was at an establishment or whatever.
Yeah.
But we go to this place, or maybe it was Wyoming. I don't know. We were driving around a lot. It was either in Vadavoo, Wyoming, and I was on a
Could have
lot
been
of
Brazil. I don't know.
a lot of gummies, a lot of dispensaries up there, a lot of
Yeah.
gummies. So, anyways, we go in there though, and I remember a while ago I was doing this job, nothing to do with Colorado. This is in Florida. This lady meets me, right? And it's like some random lady. I'm at a job, and she was a part of the lawn care service, and the whole job, she kept staring at me, going, and like kept staring at me doing that. I'm like, am I doing, like, is it me that she's looking at? Like, what am I doing to get that reaction out of that human? And then, so finally, I'm packing my tools up at the end of the day, one of the days, because she was there doing that multiple days, right?
Okay, that's a little. And you never asked her, like, excuse me, ma'am.
No, I was just like, what is your deal? You know, like, are you in or you out? What do you want? You know, like, I didn't know. So I'm packing up my tools, and she goes, hey, can I talk to you for a second? I'm like, here's where the older lady hits on me, like, because that's, you know, what happens a lot. And I turn around, I'm like, yeah, what's going on? And she was like, when I saw you, don't be startled with what I'm about to say. If it takes you off guard or if it sounds crazy, you can feel free to ignore it. So I'm like, okay, it's going to sound crazy. She was like, when I met you, you had a warrior spirit with angel-like wings of energy coming off of you. Very intense, because there's very few of you. And I was like, what do I do with that information?
Right.
Not that I love hearing it. What's my next step? Like, how do I make that better? You know? And she was like, it's in your healing nature. Like, you're a warrior spirit, a fighting spirit with healing nature. You take care of the people around you, but you fight for what you need.
Ooh,
and
that
I was
sounds
like,
pretty accurate.
oh man, that's pretty dope, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I, walked around like, oh, fucking warrior.
Does anyone else see these wings?
Fight me, like, I don't know. I wasn't aggressive about it, but anyways, so years later, I'm in Colorado. My friend's like, you want to go to the shaman? And we're driving around, whatever, and end up at this place, and he's like, I'm just gonna do a basic healing on you or whatever. And I was like, okay. So he does this reading with sage and all this different stuff, and he's putting crystals on me and stuff, and he was like, have you ever been to Venus? And I was like, no, haven't gone to Venus. And like, and the thing is, like, I want to be open to this stuff, but I'm such a
cynic.
Yeah, I'm like so cynical and like realistic. I'm like, I don't know, man.
Yeah,
I
get it.
I'm just trying to pay Verizon. They're always hounding me. Like, so he's like, you need to leave your body because you have so much. You've got a lot on your plate. You're a warrior healer, and I'm like,
no, he
shut your
said it.
effing mouth, shaman, man. You're like, so he's like, later we can do this thing. We can do a meditation that will take you to Venus.
Like the poisonous gaseous planet,
Yeah.
or like Venus in the brain? Like where's he talking about?
I think the poisonous gaseous planet,
All right.
like, is like, my energy's gonna go there though, not me, And like, people who know about this stuff are probably like, if they're watching, they're gonna be so mad at me. like, I'm not trying to belittle it. I'm just
Right.
this is what I know about it.
From somebody who's not into it, it sounds a little wild.
But what's crazy is I'm super into it now. Like,
Okay.
I believe what I'm about to tell
me
you
what
happened. I
happened.
believe what happened. So I come back, and there's an older woman.
Wait, you come back?
Yeah, we just go out for lunch. We come back.
Like, you skipped over the whole going to Venus part. Okay, so you returned to the place.
Yeah.
after-
We
okay.
left the place, smoked some weed, and ate some McDonald's, and then came back.
Okay.
And then it's dark at this point, and there's this older woman, and she's like fully undressed, completely naked.
Undressed.
Yeah,
I thought you said
undressed.
in dress.
Yeah, ingest. Eat these crystals. No, she was like, completely undressed, get completely naked. And I was like, okay, where's like the little towel? And she's like, don't eat it. I was like, okay, this is intense already.
And how many people are in this room?
Just her. At first, a couple, but then just her, right? Because she's got like an assistant, like putting all her crystals or whatever.
Yeah.
And she's like, you don't mind me, nothing sexually. You don't mind me touching you, though, do you? I was like, is it gonna hurt? She's like,
Just jams crystals into you. Yeah.
like, honestly, I was like, that's my only fear, is that like you're gonna hurt me or something. She's like, no, I'm not gonna hurt you. I was like, okay, yeah, that's whatever. So yeah, nothing awful or anything. So it's like this, like she's rubbing all these crystals on me and stuff like that. It starts off basically just like a massage, right? And then the touching part was she lifts up my balls.
With her bare hands.
Yes, with her bare cold hands. And takes a crystal and tucks it in my gooch and then holds it with my ball sack, like drops my ball sack, and it's just holding this crystal. I wish I was joking. That's your root chakra.
That's the one.
That's the one. So
what kind of crystal did she put there? Do you know?
I have no clue. It was out of sight.
It was fully covered in gold.
Could not see it. So, anyways, it was cold. I'll tell you that.
Okay.
So there, and then she puts them up a line, which I know later as like up my chakras or whatever.
Which are the other? Do you remember what the other ones are called? I know there's like a heart one.
There's a heart one. There's a. I don't know.
There's like 8. How many did you say there were?
There's 7 or 9.
7 or 9. Okay.
I feel like this is something we could look up really quickly. It doesn't matter.
You put like a different crystal in the different like points on you.
Yeah.
Right?
The head one was cool because it had like a chain around it that kind of like went onto my head.
Yeah.
And then came in technology. She put these headphones on me that had like the bells.
Yeah.
7. There's 7.
There's 7 of them.
Okay.
So this cool, it's like a specific frequency, right? That she puts in my head that it's supposed to get you where you're going spiritually, right? Then there's mystery fluid A that she's like, go ahead and open your mouth. And I'm like,
no.
well, you stuck something in my taint and now you're going to stick something in my mouth. Like, I'm nervous, like, and
As you should be.
I'm a hypochondriac when it comes to like drugs.
Yeah.
Like I got to know what I'm doing and
Right.
how much I'm doing of it and
Right.
stuff like that. So I'm like, oh man, I'm not comfortable anymore. But I'm also just like,
Like
fuck it.
this is
like,
gotta be
yeah,
okay.
what's going to happen? Like,
Right.
yeah, I'll be all right. And I'm in a professional institute. So I'm
Right.
like, so I think they
Professional,
yeah,
right,
it's like
yeah.
abandoned. They made their own set of keys. So drops the liquid in my mouth or whatever, and it
And
turned.
you never asked her what it was.
No,
Mystery liquid. All
no.
right.
I mean, after the whole session or whatever,
Okay.
I was like, "What was that?" And she's like, "It's life juice." I'm like, "Oh, that doesn't
Much more clear.
doesn't
Yeah.
tell me anything,
Right.
But anyways. So she does this stuff. My first feeling that I never feel like messed up by any means. I feel super like lethargic though, like very like okay with everything, very relaxed, like it's all good. And I start closing my eyes and kind of falling asleep to this or whatever. And then at this point, like she's not touching me or anything. She's literally just going like this. Nothing like sexual or inappropriate whatsoever. Felt completely comfortable. It was warm in the room, like the blanketing that I was on is super comfortable.
Okay.
Even with all the crystals still on me, still super. I felt, and I'm a side sleeper, and I fell asleep just coffin position. So, every time that I close my eyes, I see this blue radiating light, like, but it's like directly in front of me, and I see it like bouncing like waves, in unison with what I'm listening to. Off, right? And I can't tell if it's like if I'm dozing off or if I'm actually seeing this or whatever, but I'm kind of okay with whatever's going on. So then the deeper I get into this trance, the more colors introduce themselves, right? So this blue stays where it is. It never starts mixing up to be some type of like strobe effect. It's hard to verbalize
Oh, it's always hard.
what I
Yeah.
saw, you know what I mean? But anyways, my mouth opens again, different tasting fluid goes in there, and then I'm off to fucking space. Like, so at this point, what happens is it's like a rainbow trail, almost like Donnie Darko,
Yeah.
where I'm following this trail, right? And what I reach is like this giant, like red body of energy, and I could see it like approaching me, right? And as it approaches me, that blue figure moves further away from me, and it's almost like a mirror. So it doesn't look like me, but it's like my shape, if that makes any sense. And I don't hear any voices. I get no direction. I just feel this huge sense of comfort, right? And as I do, my head feels like it's like opening. and like static electricity is like coming off of me, right? And then I slowly back from this and feel myself like re-enter myself with like the most energy I've ever had in my entire life. Like it's
Wow.
almost if I had found purpose without anybody telling me what it was, right? And when I lean forward, I'm super lethargic still. I'm super tired and stuff, but I'm like, again, energized. Like I'm raring to go. You know what I mean? And that they were like, you left. When she leaned forward, she's like, what did you experience? She was like, well, that blue was you. That blue was you the entire time. Like that's your portrayal of yourself, experiencing these things. And then you went to Venus, and that was the body of energy that you encumbered, and you met all of your past selves or whatever, which I thought was interesting. And I was like, oh, like, because we just renew this energy over and over. And she's like, yeah. Energy is never created nor destroyed, right? Like we learn over and over again. Like you'll take this energy and you'll create another life with it at a different time, at a different place, doing different things, being someone else, like over and over. You don't even have to be a person, according to her and her beliefs,
right?
You know, but the thing about like that experience in general, like I have absolutely no fear of dying. Like the only fear that I have is that I won't leave enough for my kids to do the things that they want to do that require money. You know what I mean? Or love. I want them to know that they were loved,
Right.
like eternally. You know what I mean? But other than that, like I always looked at like religion or anything else as just like, well, this is my way of like justifying that I can live forever.
Yeah.
Like that I don't have to deal with just death and people being sad and that just being it. Like I'm completely fine with that. You know, like if the most that comes from me living as a person is that like the soil in one 6x4 square gets more nutrients than the square next to it, then dope, dude. I did my part. You know what I mean?
So you like the idea of becoming worm food because you're feeding the worms, whereas most
I'm
people
just
would
okay
say,
with it. I wouldn't be like, man, can't wait till I die and that.
well, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, right, exactly.
You might as well accept whatever happens.
Yeah. So I don't. And in all aspects of my life, I don't worry about things I can't control. I'm going to die. Like everyone's gonna die. Everybody in my life is gonna die. Like, but I don't say it in some morbid way of like, well, we're all gonna die. Fuck it. You know,
Right.
like for me, it's like.
You have a respect for it.
Yeah, for sure. I don't want it to happen, but it is what it is, man. Like, I also don't want the IRS to take a lot of my money, and they
Right.
do, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, what do you...
Well, in the cultures where they do have ceremonies surrounding the practice of death, like they literally go through like this, these are the stages, like your eyes begin, like they practice the process of dying so that people feel almost like what you felt. I feel like psychedelics and religious experiences, like without drugs, those have the ability to open your mind up to some sort of experience that then you can rely on to say, like, I'm no longer afraid because of this thing that happened. You don't have to have a near-death experience to respect death. But I wonder if we, as, let's just use America, if we taught our children to not be afraid of death because it's one of those things that's going to happen. It's kind of like losing your teeth. Like, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And kids are afraid of it, but they also have a reward, like the tooth fairy. So for death, it's almost like we have this remedy for that, which is for religious people, it's like you will go be with God. And then that's where I go, what is the benefit for the people who believe in the more kind of sad version of it, which is like we die and then there's nothing. Like, I wonder for those people, what is the benefit for them to look at it in a way that's so on the opposite end? What's wrong with those people who say, I'm going to go to heaven and be with God and Jesus, if it actually calms them down about the idea of death, you know?
Well, there's no pressure to get anything done.
True.
For me, right? If I believe that I'm just worm food, right? I've only got so much time to do what I want to do, and then that's it. That's a wrap. It's done. And on to the next guy with the torch. That's motivation for me. A lot of religious people will look at that and go, well, what's the point? You know, like the whole argument of like, oh, well, if religion doesn't exist, how come there aren't people out just, sodomizing each other and stuff like that? Well, because we have the ability to be good on our own. You know what I mean? Like, I think. So for me, it's just pressure. Like, I want to do dope things for the people around me. I want to do dope things for my kids. I want to do dope shit all the time. I just want to be dope. You know what I mean? But in my mind, not everybody else's. Like,
right.
Because I feel like the things that I idolize, like, a lot of people will catch on to that and idolize those things as well. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of the things that I've done have created opportunity. Like the people that I employ, like the jobs that I have, the rentals that people live in, like it's just like those are good things to me. You know what I mean? I just want to keep doing that.
So you feel like you've found the things that are valuable. Sorry, I don't understand that hand signal.
We're at an hour and 15 minutes.
Oh, we are? Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll wrap this. So I feel like with people watching this entire podcast, they'll get the idea of obviously what you do for work and kind of your values and that kind of stuff and your hard work. But then I feel like we like barely scratch the surface of your kind of philosophy on, I mean, there's a million things that we could talk about. It's like, how does your brain work and like what are the answers? I think weirdos are literally the best kinds of people though, because what you do is I think weirdos who are self-aware and also learning, you know, like if you are learning.
Oh, I'm forever a student, dude.
Right.
That's like one of my favorite things ever. Like I take from everybody, like the most I've learned in this year is probably from my girlfriend. Like
Vegas.
No way.
I'm dead serious. Like, but there and it's so dope, man, because everybody like you meet in your life, like there's so much you can take and learn, even if they seem so minuscule. Like my patience is through the roof. Like, that's a joke. But like, I don't know, man. If I was just comfortable doing the things, like just being me, like right. If I just took this moment and was like, this is enough information, I'm done. Like brains off, no entry, whatever. Like I feel like my life would just be stagnant from that point forward. I feel like a lot of people's lives are stagnant,
Right.
from some point or another. You know what I mean?
Right. The refusal to continue. I think some people say like once they become an adult, it's almost like I've arrived.
Yeah.
Like this is who I will always be. And that's kind of what we talked about in the beginning. But the idea that you are always pursuing, not like you to become something different.
Yeah.
You want to know more deeply. So it's like some people go outward on like what they want to portray. And I think that some of the best people, and yes, maybe they're weird or whatever, but some of the best people I think are the ones who are going deeper and deeper to understand themselves, not in a way that's like, I'm important and therefore I should know more about me. It's through that process you become more generous, more patient, more forgiving to other people. You start to see yourself and all of your, call them flaws or whatever, but then it helps you to see that in other people. If you are constantly learning, if you are constantly trying to be the best version of yourself for you, and you have children, so obviously that's a huge pull to be like, they need to have somebody good to look up to. I think that's like the lesson is always be somebody who is willing to like turn that mirror. And I love that you had an experience that was like, you almost saw yourself, but it was slightly different. So it's almost like, it's going to be like a mysterious experience that you will always remember, you know?
Oh, for sure. It was just weird.
Right. But that's what I like about those kinds of things is they don't give you fully clear answers.
Yeah.
You can interpret that experience differently for the rest of your life.
They're just puzzle pieces.
Yeah.
That like if I'm focused on me, right? How can I'm terrible at multitasking. She will agree. Like if I'm focused on me and I'm just doing me, I'm not worried about what you're doing, right? Like I'm just benefiting from the company, from the shared space, from the interaction. Like this is like these are things that I live for. Like just doing this is a cool experience, right? Doesn't matter what I gained from it. I liked doing it. I learned a lot in an hour and 15 minutes of just talking, right? If I'm focused on those things, like I have a lot of friends that even to me, like they'll be like, well, you should have done it this way. Like, what does it matter? Like, you're not doing it.
Right.
You know, or not that you can't, but like you're doing your own thing. Do that thing. I'll do my thing. And then in between, like we'll share that energy, that successful energy, right? You know,
Brene Brown, I don't know if you've ever heard of her. She did a really big TED Talk on, I believe it was on vulnerability, but she has like credentials like crazy in this whole area. But one of my favorite things she ever said was, you have to imagine what you're doing as you are basically in an arena, right? And like, let's say you're fighting a bull. You reserve seats for your critics, but since they're not in the ring fighting that bull, that's all they are. They're critics sitting in a seat. Yeah. You are the one who's doing your thing. You focus on what you're doing. And that's the most important part. You're going to have critics, and they're going to be sitting there saying, go left, go right. Oh, you suck at fighting this bull, whatever.
If I was in that position, I would have done this,
right,
and you wouldn't have failed.
And you have to invite them there. You don't block out the critics and say, no, you're not invited because this is my thing. You know that they're going to be there, and you go on anyway. And I mean, she obviously says this in a much more eloquent way, but I love that idea. I love the people who, and Kanye West is the perfect example in my mind. I just recently watched him on Joe Rogan, and I go, yeah, he's a special person, right? He's very, very unique. Some people call him crazy, right? But I look at him as somebody who has done what he wants to do. He says what he wants to do, then does it, which is massive. Most crazy creative people say a bunch of stuff and never do it. But he also has wild amounts of critics, and he just kind of like it'll get to him sometimes, but then he just says like, it doesn't matter, I'm the one doing it, I'm the one making the money, so like, goodbye.
It's the old Indian over the hill. You ever heard that expression? The first Indian over the hill comes back with a bunch of arrows in his back, and he's like, there's a lot of those motherfuckers. There's a lot, like there's.
Dude, that's so weird. I heard that just before I got here, somebody said, you know what pioneers always get, right? Because they were talking about pioneering an industry, and he said arrows in his back.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's weird. Like right before I came here,
that's funny.
That.
Yeah. There's it's a. I didn't make that up. Obviously, it's a widely used thing.
Well, obviously.
But it's so important to like. That's why philosophy is so important to me. But that is so important to remember because like one thing I say to a lot of people, especially in construction, man, there's so many different ways you can do things, and there's so many different ways I can give you this finished table and stuff like that or whatever. But if anybody ever comes to me and they're like, well, I would have done it like this, my reaction is always the same. Well, go do it. Well, show me.